started with a whisper, a faint crack in the dam wall. 20 minutes later, entire cities were underwater. What failed first? Who was warned? And who was left behind? Hit that subscribe button if you believe the world needs to know. Write in the comments, "I stand for the truth," and tell us where you're watching from. Don't let this story drown in silence. It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday morning. The sky above Sichuan province was gray, heavy with storm clouds, but no different than usual during monsoon season. Commuters hustled across bridges, children laughed on their way to school, and thousands worked inside the control rooms of China's biggest hydroelectric installations, unaware that beneath their feet, the earth had begun to shift. Deep within the steel and concrete skeleton of the Meilong Dam, a nearly invisible fracture had been growing, silent, patient, and lethal. At exactly 8:03 a.m., an ominous vibration hummed through the dam's lower structure. Surveillance monitors flickered. Seismographs spiked. On screen, the crack spread like a spiderweb across one panel, so small it could have been dismissed as static. But to veteran engineer Zhou Wen, watching the feed from the safety bunker, that line was death approaching. Shut the gates. Lock everything down. Evacuate Sector 4 immediately. Zhou barked into the intercom, voice trembling. His junior colleagues stared at him. "Sir, that's over 200,000 residents. Just do it." Zhou slammed his hand on the console. But it was too late. At 8:09 a.m., the first explosion echoed like thunder cracking open the sky. The eastern spillway erupted. Concrete burst apart like brittle clay. Water, millions of tons of it, poured through the breach with the fury of a god scorned. Highways vanished. Trees folded like grass. Entire villages downstream had just minutes. No sirens, no warnings. Meanwhile, at the Jinping Bridge, traffic was flowing normally. Dashcam footage would later reveal the horror. A roaring wall of water taller than any building surged into view, toppling support columns like matchsticks. In one heart-stopping moment, the bridge disintegrated. Vehicles, drivers, pedestrians, all swallowed into the rising tide. Back at the Emergency Management Office in Beijing, Director Lin Fong froze as satellite data flashed red on all screens. 2 dams are down. Possibly 3. "We have a Giga Tsunami forming in the western corridor," the technician reported, pale as chalk. Lin's voice cracked. "How long until it reaches Chengdu?" The answer came in a whisper. 30 minutes. It wasn't just water. It was wrath. As the Meilong and Gaotang dams collapsed within minutes of each other, an unstoppable wall of destruction surged across the lowlands. Not even the mountains could tame it. The great rivers of Sichuan had turned into roaring serpents, coiled with fury, and now they were unleashed upon millions. At 8:21 a.m., the first towns fell. A drone operator near the Jialing River captured a harrowing image. From high above, the streets of Xinyuan County looked like veins of a living city. But as the camera zoomed in, a black wave engulfed entire neighborhoods in one sweep. Buildings collapsed like toys. Rooftops bobbed in muddy chaos. No screams were heard, only the deep, low roar of the earth bleeding. In a small village outside Leshan, a farmer named Lao Ping had just finished feeding his chickens when he noticed the river near his field behaving strangely. The surface was trembling, no wind, no rain, just trembling. He dropped the feed bucket and turned to yell, but the sound of his voice was instantly drowned as a dark wave, 5 stories high, crashed through the valley. Lao Ping's body was never found. In Chengdu, chaos ignited like wildfire. News of the dam collapse spread not through sirens, but through shaky phone footage, desperate voice notes, and live streams that cut off mid-sentence. Panic became a contagion. Parents abandoned groceries to rush to schools. Hospital generators failed. Bridges, once symbols of strength, crumbled like sandcastles. From inside a crammed train station, 14-year-old Mei Lin clutched her little brother's hand. Their mother had told them to run, told them not to look back. But Mei Lin did. And what she saw stayed etched into her mind forever. The skyline behind them bending as water hurled buses, street lamps, and cars into the station's entrance like battering rams. Elsewhere, in the airspace over Sichuan, pilot Captain Yu Fong of China Eastern Airlines was circling for emergency landing clearance. What she saw from the cockpit window made her forget her training. Her voice, normally crisp, cracked as she radioed in. Chengdu is gone. It's underwater. Military units scrambled to deploy. The People's Liberation Army launched helicopters to lift people from rooftops. But the wind currents generated by the Giga Tsunami made flight nearly impossible. One chopper spun out of control, crashing into a submerged stadium, leaving nothing but floating debris. The Chinese Meteorological Bureau tried issuing warnings, but every system was overloaded. Text alerts came too late. Emergency broadcasts were drowned by static. By 8:50 a.m., over 30,000 lives were presumed lost. And the water, merciless, roaring, alive, kept coming. But amidst the mayhem, whispers of one unanswered question began circling. Why did the dams fail? And why were the engineers ordered to keep silent 3 days ago? By 9:10 a.m. it was no longer just a flood, it was a national collapse. Highways were submerged. Train lines twisted like spaghetti. Power grids blinked out one by one as substations drowned beneath the surge. Millions were cut off. Entire provinces vanished from radar. To the rest of the world, it was as if southwestern China had gone dark in a blink. At the National Energy Control Center in Beijing, top engineers watched helplessly as their real-time map bled red. One by one, nodes representing energy stations, dams, nuclear reactors, and transmission lines went offline. Then the phone rang. It was direct from Zhongnanhai. Shut down all access to the public grid. Initiate blackout protocol alpha, said a voice that trembled with fear, but not for the people. It was fear for information. Someone somewhere didn't want the world to know the truth. Back in Sichuan, society unraveled with terrifying speed. Cities that had once thrived with 5G towers and neon lights became ruins of rust and desperation. Without power or potable water, survivors turned into scavengers. Convenience stores were looted in under 15 minutes. Pharmacies were smashed open. A hospital in Deyang was overtaken by angry families demanding oxygen for children trapped in collapsed wards. In the chaos, heroes emerged. Unarmed, unpaid, unnoticed. Like Li Ji, a 29-year-old nurse who refused evacuation. She stayed behind in a flooded clinic to care for 13 stranded elderly patients. When the backup generator failed, she lit candles and spoon-fed water from melted ice to the oldest woman, aged 96. That woman survived. Li Ji didn't. Down the mountain roads, engineer Zhou Wen was alive, but barely. Thrown by the blast of Meilong Dam. His right leg was shattered, his head bleeding. He dragged himself across rocks and broken trees to reach a damaged comms tower, only to discover it had already been fried by the surge. But he carried something more important, a flash drive, encrypted, hidden under his shirt. Inside was footage. Internal footage from 3 days before the collapse. Footage showing water levels had already reached dangerous highs. Footage showing officials debating, not whether to alert the public, but how to silence the technicians who did. Back in the capital, News anchors wore calm expressions while reading from censored scripts. There has been a minor water control incident in western districts. The government is monitoring the situation. Please remain calm. But the people weren't calm. In provinces not yet touched by the flood, riots began. Panic purchases. ATM lines stretching for kilometers. At a subway station in Nanjing, passengers screamed when a speaker crackled with static, fearing it was a flood alert. It wasn't. But the trauma had already spread faster than the water. And then came the whispers. Across the encrypted web, among journalists in exile, and inside foreign embassies, 3 words circulated like wildfire. They knew before. The tsunami drowned cities. But the real flood of lies, silence, and betrayal was only beginning. In a cold underground vault beneath Chengdu's military zone, before it was swallowed by water, 6 officials had met. There were no cameras, no recordings. Only one man dared to speak first, Minister Wei Honqing of Infrastructure Safety. He placed a file on the polished table, stamped red, classified. The dam cracks started 3 months ago, he said. And we buried it. Around him, generals, intelligence chiefs, and energy moguls exchanged sharp looks. Burying it, one scoffed, prevented mass panic. We did what was necessary. But Wei stood firm. No. You silenced whistleblowers. You shut down safety protocols. And now cities are gone, because of a decision made in this room. The silence that followed was suffocating. Meanwhile, 300 kilometers away, engineer Zhou Wen, half dead, half fueled by vengeance, was moving again. He had been picked up by a rural rescue unit in a battered truck. They were unaware that in his bloodied hands was the key to truth. Flash drive. With it, Zhou planned to reach the foreign consulate in Chongqing. It was the only place left with working satellite uplink. The journey would take days if he survived. Inside the drive were more than just reports. There were videos. A grainy surveillance file showing the Gaoteng Dam shaking violently in a dry season. An audio recording of a boardroom meeting. Voices cold, calculating. What if the flood targets only rural sectors? Damage is minimal. We release pressure early. Casualties will be framed as weather-related. We control the narrative. But there was one file no one expected. A secret inspection log from an international contractor. German engineers hired a year ago to assess the dam system. Their report was damning. Immediate structural compromise detected. Recommend shutdown within 90 days. The report was dismissed. Then disappeared. Now the last surviving copy was with Zhou. And someone was hunting him. On the roads toward Chongqing, a black SUV with no plates moved silently. Inside, men in dark tactical gear scrolled through real-time intercepts. Zhou Wen's face flashed on a tablet. They had one mission. Retrieve the flash drive. Or ensure it never leaves Sichuan. Meanwhile, across social media, what was left of it, anonymous accounts began leaking fragments of Zhou's files. Hashtags exploded before being wiped. Censored within minutes. But not before screenshots went global. Did China let its own dams fail? Corruption or sabotage? The Giga Tsunami files exposed. Inside government servers, cyber lockdowns began. Journalists disappeared. Families who posted about missing loved ones found their accounts vanished. And amidst it all, in the ruined cityscape, a child stood on the rooftop of a half-submerged apartment. Her eyes scanned the horizon. She had lost her parents, her school, her voice. But she still had hope. By sunrise the next day, the death toll had passed 400,000. But that number wasn't the top concern of those in power. It was one man, one flash drive, and the truth threatening to ignite a firestorm across the globe. Zhou Wen had become the most wanted man in China. Posters bearing his face, branded foreign agent and saboteur, flooded checkpoints. Roadblocks went up across provinces. Drone patrols circled above highways. Yet none of it stopped Zhou. Driven by guilt, justice, or maybe just desperation. He limped forward with a makeshift cane, hidden in the cargo hold of a relief van headed to Chongqing. What Zhou didn't know was this. Someone else was helping him. Liang Mei, a former intelligence analyst turned whistleblower, had intercepted chatter from her old agency. She'd seen the truth behind the screens, and she knew Zhou's files matched what she had once tried to expose. Her own sister had died in the floods. Now vengeance had a name. She reached out through an encrypted line. A message blinked on Zhou's rescued phone. If you're alive, don't go to the embassy. They've been compromised. Go to the old metro tunnel. I'll meet you there. Zhou stared at the message, unsure if it was real. He had no time to decide. Because 5 minutes later, the van he rode in was rear-ended by a military convoy. Gunfire cracked through the fog. He jumped. Shattered glass, screaming civilians, and rising water all blurred together as Zhou scrambled down a riverbank, bullets splashing beside him. A tactical drone flew overhead. He dove into the mud, covered the flash drive in plastic, and buried it under a rock before disappearing into the forest. By nightfall, state media was in overdrive. News anchors with steady smiles reported. Suspect Zhou Wen, believed to be working with foreign terrorists, has escaped capture. Citizens are urged to report any sightings. But the people weren't buying it anymore. Hashtags reappeared. Anonymous channels reposted parts of the files. The truth spread like wildfire on burner phones and foreign live streams. The government knew. The dams were unsafe. This wasn't a disaster. It was engineered silence. Outside China, the world began to stir. Newsrooms in Berlin and London opened international investigations. A hacked transmission leaked onto global TV. A 12-second video showing dam inspectors arguing with Chinese officials, one shouting, "You're putting 50 million lives at risk." Then it cut to black. Inside UN chambers, diplomats demanded answers. But China denied everything, claiming doctored videos and fake actors. No one could prove otherwise, unless Zhou survived. Meanwhile, in a candlelit tunnel beneath Chongqing, Liang Mei waited, hand on her encrypted tablet, pulse racing. Her phone buzzed once. Zhou was near, but so were they. The waters may have receded, but the rage had only begun to rise. Across the drowned heartlands of China, survivors lit fires, not to warm their bodies, but to light the dark truth that had been buried beneath concrete, command and cowardice. The deaths of hundreds of thousands were no longer seen as tragedy, they were seen as betrayal. At 11:57 p.m., from an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Chongqing, a live stream began. The feed was shaky, dim, but unmistakably real. On screen, Zhou Wen, wrapped in torn clothing, face pale, bruised but alive. He sat beside a woman, Liang Mei, holding a tablet with trembling hands. "I was there," Zhou began, voice hoarse. "I saw the warnings. I watched the cracks grow. I begged them to act. They told me to shut up or disappear." The live stream lasted 9 minutes and 42 seconds. During that time, the Chinese firewall failed. Hackers inside and outside the country flooded bandwidth. Satellite relays hijacked local channels. The signal bounced from Tokyo to Berlin to Buenos Aires. For one brief window, China's population of 1.4 billion saw what their government never wanted them to see. Internal memos ordering data suppression. A surveillance footage of dam walls shaking weeks before collapse. Audio recordings of officials gambling with millions of lives. And most damning of all, a confession from a former party official, now in hiding in Vietnam, stating, "We chose to protect investments over people. We made a mistake. A fatal one." At 12:06 a.m., the stream was cut. Authorities found the signal source, but it was already empty. Zhou and Liang had fled again. But the damage was done. Protests exploded in every province. In Chengdu, thousands gathered with homemade signs reading, "We are not collateral." In Beijing, students chained themselves outside ministry gates, chanting names of drowned towns. In Hong Kong, a digital memorial projected victim names onto the side of a skyscraper. Over 20,000 of them. The government responded with lockdowns, internet blackouts, mass detentions. But it was too late. The world had seen. The UN launched an independent inquiry. Foreign press flooded the region. The International Criminal Court began compiling evidence. Even allies grew cold. But perhaps the most powerful blow came not from courts or protests, but from a child. 1 month after the live stream, a viral video emerged. A little girl in a ruined school uniform stood beside a collapsed building, staring into the camera with tears in her eyes. "My mom said dams protect us. But the dam broke. And she never came home." The video reached 800 million views in 72 hours. Even party elites began to fracture. Few stepped down. Others fled. And then, quietly, far from the headlines, came the final message. Photo uploaded anonymously. Taken from a hilltop at dusk. In it, Zhou Wan and Liang Mei stood side by side, overlooking a river that no longer raged. They were never seen again. But what they started could not be silenced. The Giga Tsunami may have been the disaster that shook the earth. But the truth was the wave that changed a nation.